Another lesson of the Logos and Letters. My name is Liam, and we've got a great lesson coming up here. We left off last lesson with steresis deca hexis, right? We finished off all of this stuff, so we're going to proceed on. Remember, we're looking at opposition. This is the chapter. I know we're covering many different topics and areas of expertise and science and whatnot. However, we've got to remember that this is chapter 10 and we're looking at the 4 modes of opposition, really fundamental for the vast majority of topics and debates and points of interest in so many different intellectual fields. This is really a gold mine, and this next one struck me particularly. It was quite clarifying. There was a real problem that I had, and it was solved by the study of this particular paragraph in this chapter. And we'll get into that. I won't explain my thoughts or anything. I'll just point out what it was. Steresis deca hexis. All right, steresis is the closest word we have in English. The Latinate sort of word is privation. So when you're deprived of something, when you're suffering a privation, what that is a lack of something you should have by nature, okay, not by right or by pedigree or by lineage, okay, or by favor, by nature, okay. So let me get an image that sort of describes that. Well, this one here, Goliath by nature should have a body, but he is deprived of a body. That's not a very good example because that's no longer Goliath. As soon as you die, the person you were is gone, because a corpse does not fit the definition of what a man is. But anyway, let's continue on. For his age, being bald is not a privation. It's completely expected. Yeah, it's kind of hard. I guess painters don't really like to draw or paint people with privation. How interesting. This is this a part of art theory that I'm discovering during my lesson? There's some art theory where people like to gloss over the uncomfortable when it comes to that. I'm going to have to make up my own hypothetical. All right. Privation is when you lack something that by nature you should have. Just one particular example of that is if you were a teenager and you were born without sight. Your privation is blindness. Okay, you're a teenager, born without sight, and you can say that your privation is blindness. You lack sight. Okay, you lack it because by nature you should have it, and that's a good example to start us off. Hexis, all right. Hexis, of course, can mean habit, something that you do frequently, a disposition that has become long-lasting, endurable, and so on. But hexis here is having what you should have by nature. Okay, so if you're a teenager and you have sight, then you have hexis. By nature, you should have it, you do have it, hexis. You should have it, you don't have it, steresis. All right? It's sort of like, really means absence, sort of where we get sterile from. But anyway, let's proceed on. Steresis deca hexis legetai men peritautonti. This is it, right? This is it. Well said, sir. Let me get the highlighter. I did have the highlighter. Is spoken around the exact same thing. Tautonti. I don't think we've seen this combination yet. The T has become attached to the auton, and it was a part of to auton, right? Legatai men peritautonti, right? So that is why it's got this soft breathing mark. So it's spoken of the same thing. All right. So if it's speaking, they both got to speak about the same rock, the same person, the same giraffe, the same rhinoceros, the same tree kangaroo. Okay. hoion he opsis kai he tuflotes periophthalmon, right? So he's got a substance here. The eyes are a substance. Remember we spoke about that in, I think it was chapter 7, relatives. Yeah, I think so. That the body parts are substances themselves in their own right. So about the eyes, you can speak about sight and blindness. All right. Katholu the aibain. So universally speaking, and hoi hexis perfuke genestai. Right. So I think I've already sort of covered this point, but universally speaking, so in all cases, we say that the having of this natural thing is in that which by nature naturally has come about. All right, so perfuke by nature has come about. The core root of this is fuor, like I grow. I grow is probably the best translation of that. Perituto legatai hekateronauton, right? And each of them are spoken according to this, to these things. Estereistai de tote legomen hakaston tontes hexios decticon, right? So to be in a state of privation is then like, we speak then about each of these things according to the hexios, the, what's the best English here? The natural what? The natural faculty that we should have received, okay? So we speak about, he has eyesight, okay, he's looking up to God, he's God, and, blindness will be spoken about this too. The hair on his head, okay, if you're a 12-year-old boy and you go bald, that's privation, right? You should have still had hair on your head, but you are now suffering privation from that. It's all fallen out prematurely, as we would say, and it's all speaking about the same substance according to that rule. And the privation is the privation of something, that some natural faculty or natural thing that should have been present. Okay, that's what those last lines were speaking about. And it's this is an important rule because we're going to get into some nitty-gritty problem of evil sort of stuff in a second. So keep that in mind. Let's continue on though. Hotan, so like whenever, and hui perfuken hu parkain, like in something that it should naturally belong, kai hote, and when perfuken akain medamos hu parkai, right? So whenever something which naturally should belong, and when naturally should be having it, does not belong. Now that is steresis, right? It should belong naturally in this particular whatever you want to talk about, right? It has to be the exact same thing. But it's the case that when you go to look at it, it doesn't have it. Medamos huparke, right? Huparke is in the subjunctive here with hotan, and it expresses a hypothetical like might, all right? So it might not belong. So, you go and if you see a blind animal, okay, say you go to the zoo and you see a blind goat, okay, and this goat is blind and it's like middle-aged, right? It's a middle-aged goat, it's blind. That's blindness because you went and checked, and naturally by nature goats at that in the prime of their life should have the faculty of sight, right? That is definitely within their nature, and this one's blind. You're speaking about blindness of the eyes of that thing, and that is privation. It should be there. It should sight opsin, heopsin should be there. It's not, okay. By nature, nature wants to give this goat sight, right? If I can make nature seem like a subject for a moment. Nature wants to give this goat sight, but for some error in its own biology or some injury of some sort or both, it does not have that sight. It is blind, okay? And so on and so forth. And that is proper privation. Nodon tegar legomenu tome equanodontas, right? So here he goes on to clarify, and we don't tegar, and for we do not speak of a toothless thing being that which does not have teeth by nature, perfuken, right? He's omitting the verb here, kai tuflon tome equanopsin, and we don't call something blind which by nature does not have sight, which by nature does not have teeth. Echon, right? It's in the subjunctive here as well. Alla tome echon hote perfuken echain, right? But that which might have had, should have had, by nature, right? So if it should have teeth by nature, such as a 30-year-old woman should have teeth by nature, and she doesn't, toothless, right? If a 2-year-old dog should have sight, but it doesn't, blind, tu flotes estin, right? But if it shouldn't have teeth, okay, so what doesn't have teeth? Whales. Some whales are toothless by nature. They have like bristles. So if you went to one of those whales that have bristles in their mouth and you said that's toothless, you're wrong. It's not toothless. It's not suffering a privation of teeth. All right. It's bristled. All right. We don't. If the whale could speak for a moment by miracle, like Balaam's donkey, and looked at you and said, well, you're bristleless, you would shake your head and go, no, I'm not meant to have bristles. And then the whale would shake its head and go, well, I'm not meant to have teeth. All right, then you part ways and the whale was right. You were right initially with your initial thought by thinking it doesn't have teeth, but the way you described it was wrong. Okay, privation. Is it supposed to have it? And it does have it? Hexis. Is it supposed to have it? And it doesn't have it? Steresis. Privation. All right. I'm going to just use the Greek word hexis from now on. I'm not going to make up an English translation word for it. Hexis is just hexis from now on. I think that's just easier, because saying natural faculties or natural things, natural powers every time, it's going to drive me nuts. So, yep, we can continue on with that. Like, so when it should have it by nature, doesn't. Right? You may be wondering as well, if you're learning Greek, why does it sometimes say may and sometimes say ou or ur, right? Ou's up here actually somewhere. I remember reading it recently, but yeah, there, right? May is used a lot with the subjunctive and the optative too. Anything that's like hypothetical, you're going to use may, all right? So mayechon, it might not have it, Anyway, dinagarek genetes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave it there. This is a addition to the thought, and we'll probably cover all of this part next, and then we'll see how we go. So I hope that has clarified what privation is. All right, and now that I've done that, I might just add one point, and that was a point I raised at the beginning of this lesson, is what problem this solved that was bugging me, and that is original sin. Growing up, went to a Catholic primary school and Catholic high school. I wasn't religious in high school. I was religious in primary school. But the whole way through, I couldn't get understand original sin. I couldn't understand the resurrection and original sin at the same time, for lots of reasons. But one of the key things, I was like, what's going on with all of this evil? And original sin was at the root of it, because it was at the root of so many moral evils. And this particular paragraph really put that to bed. I don't really need to explain why. But if you think about original sin and the idea of privation being that which by nature you should have, that which by nature was intended for you, then, you can put two and two together and see how this solved it for me. No longer do I have to worry that there is a God out there portioning out evil as if it was medicine, or as if it was rations, okay, or if it was some form of ammunition. No, that God need not exist with this piece of logic. With this piece of logic, I can rest assured that any sort of evil stemming from original sin is no longer his direct doing. It is a state of natural privation, moral privation, that I'm actually going to leave it there, because otherwise I'm going to launch fully into a theological lesson, which I promise not to do. So I'll leave that there. Interesting food for thought. Hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and we'll continue on with much of the same stuff in the next couple. As always, my name is Liam. Si semper fortis in opere tuo, and I'll see you next time.